Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk episode 807. That's right, one away from 808, and we do have a special guest lined up for next week, so do stay tuned for that. I may or may not tell you, or we might have to wait. A couple of housekeeping things before we get onto it. Before we get onto it, I should probably tell you what the podcast is about. The podcast is about music technology. If this is your first time listening, we talk about synthesizers, drum machines, software, music creation, DAWs, live performance, streaming, all the technology and the kind of systems that surround the creation and performance and distribution of music, I suppose. So yeah, a big remit, fortunately, because it's summer and there's generally a little bit quieter, but we've got a lot to talk about this week. I should actually tell you that we're trying to reintroduce the concept of topics. So if you've got any topics you want us to talk about, I post the show basically the next week's show after this. So from Thursday night or from Wednesday night, there should be next week's show ready to go on YouTube. So you can comment in there and it will accept comments, and then we can use that to grab. Or if you're a Patreon supporter or on Discord or any of those things, then you can post in there as well. Actually, speaking of Patreon, I should post our Patreon ad because I've been just updated it. Hey folks, why not consider joining us on Patreon? For a mere £2, you get all our editorial posts ad-free, so none of those pesky YouTube ads. You also get the Sonic Talk pre-show and access to the Discord. But if you go up a layer, not only you'll get stuff like, I've just posted this, the TO5 preview. There's questions there for those who want to know a little bit more about it. We've also posted one of our new features, monthly update, or well, maybe a couple of weeks. Not sure how often we're going to do that, but we're starting to do that because we're going to be revamping these tiers and adding a lot more besides. But you also get, like I say, Sonic Talk pre-show, 360 videos, exclusive discounts. There's the Polybrute 12 extra sounds, and free samples, all kinds of stuff. And if you join before the end of the show at the upper tier, your name will appear in credits. Speaking of which, I want to welcome new members Kaminoki, Scott Wellborn, and Carl Dennis. Thanks very much for supporting us. If you're thinking about it, now's a good time. Back to the show. Indeed. So, yes, anyway, that's the sort of housekeeping. I also should say welcome to all our chatties. We've got a lot of people in there. Thanks again to Wagyu. I know had a bit of a break. He's back on the case and it's all, everything's good. He's a moderator for us and many other live streams. Very much appreciated. A man of true generosity with his time. And who else have we got there? We got Lady Aptitude, Red Walks, Jimmy Chonga, Neil Wharton, Robath, Melted Cheese, Home Studio, Jumpstar, Synchtron, gosh, whole bunch of people. Nice to see you there, as always. Welcome as ever. So let's get on to some guests. We can introduce them. We'll start with Yoad Nevo, who's there in his studio in London, where he mans the controls of, well, Atmos rig, music production, plugin development, all that stuff. How you doing, Yoad? You well?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Good to be back.
Excellent. Busy?
Busy. Baby Audio Humanoid was just released. I was involved with the development of that.
Okay,
so
brilliant.
That's a very, very cool plugin, which I would like to use the opportunity to plug. Why not? And yeah, that was my first project with Baby Audio. Really cool company. And cool product. Besides that, mixing away, I got a new bridge on my Jazz Master, but I don't think that that's of any interest to anyone that's watching. And
well, you might be right.
Except for Gaz,
you might be right, but well. Glad to hear. Well, I hope you get a bit of a slowdown in the summer. I mean, I'm hoping to. I'm getting away this weekend. I'm taking Jane to watch. She's going on a puffin cruise in West Wales, and I will be hanging about in Milford Haven for 5 hours while she hopefully doesn't get seasick and the weather's nice. But it should be good fun. Anyway, that first chuckle. Well, actually, we'll go to Robbie Puricelli because Robbie's there. Failed Muso, or rather Pro Synth Network. We've changed his third. Still flanked by the Arturias there. Your light's not on. Your on-air light's gone. Is the battery done, or do you only do it for when you're streaming?
I had it unplugged, and I've just not been able to plug it back in again. I'm just lazy. That's all it is.
Can't reach over that massive pile of synthesizers you've got
Something
behind
like
you.
that, yeah, indeed.
How are things? Anyway, good?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's been busy. We did the Synthesized show in Cambridge the weekend, which went down an absolute storm, thanks to Peter James Stephen, who's in the chat, who came along with all of his emulators. So we had literally one of every emulator on display from 1 through 4 in hardware, and then the final one in software. We actually had 2 emulator 2s, one of which currently belongs to Tai Unwin, but used to belong to Meteor, and it was there on display, so that was very cool. And we took the Polybrute as well, Polybrute 12. Lots of people like that, and the Frankie goes to Hollywood 106, so that got a lot of attention. So yeah, lots of fun, and it seems like the business is ramping up again post Super Booth. Things are coming in, so lots of writing, lots of stuff to do.
Yeah, cool. Well, glad to hear it. Excellent. And of course, we have. I guess we call you a refugee from Glastonbury because you spent the weekend there, like many hundreds of thousands of people. More than the weekend. How long were you there? You said Gaz Williams.
Wednesday till Monday, so it was a fair trek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's a lot of washing.
Yeah. So as anyone who goes to Glastonbury knows, it takes about a week or so of just afterwards. Oh, God. Yeah. But, I mean, the thing about Glastonbury Festival is it is so vast. It's so huge. And it really does reward you if you walk around and find a lot of the things off the beaten track and stuff. I think it was 106 stages simultaneously at Glastonbury this year. Yeah, and it's, you think about each one of them has got all the programming across. Some were starting from Wednesday. The big stages only start Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I played actually. I had a couple of gigs there, which were great.
Oh, nice.
Played on a Thursday, which is an ace time to play actually, because you get all your responsibility out of the way. Yes. Yeah.
Can you get your gear off site as well, so you don't have to worry about it anymore?
I had it taken the next day. Brilliant. Got back to, it was taken by someone else to Bristol, so it was amazing. So yeah, responsibilities were, and then, which is great because everyone knows there's that thing. Oh, it's one of the nightmare things when you're just on a gig and everyone's really hyped and high and having a great time, and you got all the gear to deal with. It's like, whoa. So offloading the responsibilities is so nice. But yeah, I mean, there's 1,000,001 possible conversations about Glastonbury that would be relevant, I think, to the Sonic audience. In the pre-show we talked a little bit about some of that. Is that something you'd like to talk about first, or come back?
I wonder whether we should, whether we could do that first. Let me have a look. Yeah, I think so. I think we could well do it. But before I do that, before you get there, I have a video to play. I was trying to find an aerial shot that wasn't going to be, have some sort of anthemic music behind it and cause some sort of licensing. And the best I could do was I found basically the Dorset air ambulance approach shot. So you can see this, and this was from last year. So I'm afraid that's as cheap as because I can't afford the licensing for anything current.
Hello,
so
welcome to another Sonic Lab.
It's that one, isn't it? Is it this one? No, God, I'll get there in the end. What
nice
number is
previews.
it? I thought it was number 6. It's supposed to be 6.
Coming up on this week's show.
No, it's not speed.
Hello, welcome to another Sonic
Where's
Lab.
it gone?
This is more of one of
Wait a minute.
patch flip demos.
Hold on.
Which is what I do.
I'm going to find it in a minute. Aerial view, 1, 2, 3, 4. Isn't it? Oh, there we go. Here it comes. I'll do that as well. I'll give it some kind of... Yeah, so this is the Dorset Air Ambulance approaching the site last year. By all accounts, it was even bigger this year. So this is Glastonbury Light, effectively. It's just them in a helicopter. Hopefully they're going to do a demonstration rather than actually pick someone up who needed some urgent care. I'd hate to think that we're piggybacking on someone's terrible emergency. But yeah, so Glastonbury was on. I mean, all the stuff, it was bigger. My daughter went this year, Gaz went as well. We talked about it. I think what I'm really interested in is, aside from all the experiences, I mean, if I go with my takeaways from watching from afar, some of the big acts that I saw seemed to be less able to project themselves to an audience of that size. So there were certain bands that I just thought, well, they're just playing their thing. I think Scissor was one of them, which the set looked amazing. Dua Lipa obviously can project as well. I mean, it's quite hyper. I'd like to say shout out to Georgie Faith Ward, who she's been on the podcast. She was playing with Dua Lipa, and she's just said it was amazing. But some of this other stuff, which just seemed to be kind of projecting rather than kind of, here's my show. There was very little audience interaction with some of these people, and yet, massive audience. But also, there seemed to be an awful lot of issue with sound this year. And I went to the doctors had to get a blood test on Tuesday morning, and the nurse who did it, I noticed she had a wristband, and she said, "Oh yeah, I was there." And I said, "Yeah, the sound was terrible on the telly for quite a few of the big acts. Like really, come on, guys, sort it out." I mean, I felt I could have done better, given the controls and maybe not faulty equipment. And she said it was the same there. So that must mean that it was the actual source systems rather than the redundant systems. So that was something that was really interesting. I mean, obviously it's a festival. You're in the middle of the field. Stuff happens. But, for these big headline acts like Shania Twain, Cyndi Lauper, I think Coldplay had it together, but they tour incessantly and probably brought all their own stuff because they probably know how it works. But quite interesting that some of the technicals were a problem when you're thinking of broadcasting. I wonder what's going on behind the scenes. I know, Gaz, you were there. I mean, some of the little stages, I mean, I guess, you take it in your stride, don't you? It's like, oh, this is fun. You make it part of the show. But when it's like a live broadcast and you've got like no leeway whatsoever in the slot and there are 200,000 people in front of the stage or whatever, you kind of got to get it right, haven't you? You can't mess around. And these things seem to persist as well, I noticed, which was really more concerning for me.
That's quite interesting, though, because that's not my experience with the sound. I think the gigs that I saw generally sounded really good. The Scissor one, which was a really strange choice for the Sunday night headliner, it was the smallest crowd I've ever seen at the Pyramid. Like
all of them, teenage girls, all singing along. Yeah.
Yeah. But like nobody really knew who she was. I mean, she has got quite an impressive sort of resume, but at the same time, it just felt like the wrong act. A few hours earlier, Janelle Monáe had played on the same stage, and really, they should have switched those over. Yeah. Janelle would have just, everyone would still be talking about, that gig now. But really, sadly for Scissor, it was like not. It was she had something on her voice that made her voice sound fuzzy and unappealing. And it seemed to be on every song. I only watched about 3 songs. The set, as you say, was absolutely brilliant. But she had this kind of strange thing of she did have live musicians on stage, but they were all kind of hidden behind the set, which I found a little bit odd. There
was a drummer with a lot of tom-toms. I do know that much.
Yeah, he was going for it on the toms. I tell you what was really apparent to me walking around. So what happens is at Glastonbury, there's like an after hours thing. There's where the big stages finish, and then there's all these kind of all sorts of places that you can walk around after midnight, and a lot of DJs going on. And I kept hearing the same issue with the sound of DJs, and I know exactly what it is overmastered music being played out of these systems, and where everything is so maxed, and when it's coming out of the systems,
double liberty, yeah.
It has no dimension. It just sounded awful. And I was thinking, God, there should be some caning going on in Glastonbury. And I don't mean the caning that you normally associate with Glastonbury.
Punishment caning. Yeah.
Punishment caning to get people to master their tunes properly. You don't need to make them loud. The system is designed to make it loud. And those little slidey things they have on the mixers, they're really useful for sort of level balancing. So come on, stop it. I mean, the loudness was something boring years ago. But I just heard it over and over again, just this unbelievable flatness to the sound of electronic music being DJ'd. There was a contrast, for instance, on the Friday night. Oh, now this, for some of you, you will be green with envy. I went to see Steve Hillage and Miguel Garodi performing Rainbow Dome Music, which was an album that they did for a festival, I think back in 1979. They were revisiting it in a new stage called Woodsies. And they had this enormous, big surround sound system. Huge. And the contrast of walking there, passing all these DJs with this horrible paper-thin sound, getting to Woodsies and hearing the masters of this beautiful, deep, rich, textural sound. It was absolutely gorgeous. And it got me thinking about how Miguel Garodi is one of the undersung absolute legends of synthesizers. And she was using her Synthi. I think she's been using it for about 50 years, I think she said. So Miguel was on some of the Gong albums, and then her and Steve became System 7 later. I'm sure many of you will know. But she has got this beautiful, like all this kind of, this beautiful sort of ebbing, flowing kind of psychedelic, lovely thing.
Yeah, dynamic, yeah.
I think she's the best at it. I think she really needs to be.
I'll have to check that out. Good shout.
Yeah, but just very briefly to finish off on the point that I was just saying, though, I think that that the DJing, there was a definite drum and bass was really, really popular. It seems like drum and bass is having a new resurgence. It was most of the stuff I was hearing in the after hours was just an enormous amount of drum and bass. I was like, okay, and it's like with really young audiences for it, because of course drum and bass has been around now for 30 years or so. It feels like it's having a renaissance. Definitely, that would have been one of my takeaways. But the last thing I wanted to say was I saw this many, many times over the festival, was like a trend moving away, sadly, from bass guitar, or bass guitarists also having an analog synth and going between the two, or not having a bass guitar at all and doing all the bass parts on analog synths or whatever. But that was a recurring thing that I saw over and over again. Like the Irish band Lancome, for instance, very traditional Irish music in many respects. But I noticed that the drummer didn't have a kick drum, he just had a trigger, so he was essentially playing electronic bass drums with this very acoustic traditional Irish folk kind of sound. But also the bass player didn't have a bass at all, he just had what I think was like a sub 37 or definitely one of the Moogs, so all the bass lines were coming from that, and so it was kind of just a subtle addition to traditional Irish folk, but through the big sound systems, when the bass is coming in, that kind of hybrid of a traditional and a modern was quite captivating. That's up on the iPlayer for those of you can see it.
Yeah, the BBC smashed it as ever. They really did a great job.
The Otoboke Beaver, Japanese band, 4 women playing on the park stage, was amazing, absolutely amazing. But for me, the concert of the whole festival was Idols. Were just, I thought, next level, absolutely brilliant.
Interesting. I saw a few things. Any of you chaps? Were you working over the weekend? Did you get a chance to catch any of that stuff? I mean, have you ever done?
And I watched a bit of on telly. I agree about the sound, but I'm not sure that it's the actual sound or just the balance of the crowd mics. So it seems like the crowd mics were so loud that it almost didn't matter whether the sound the mix itself was good or not, because you could only hear.
Right.
I can understand that you want to get the vibe and the ambience and all that, but it seems like it was mainly that, and you couldn't really hear any punch of drums, and
I would get the kick
out of from a live performance and all that. I enjoyed the Kasabian. I thought were good. I liked the performance. PJ Harvey was good, and I relate to what Gaz said about some acts not translating so well to that kind of massive crowd and stage. The Sugar Babes was one of those acts, but I have a warm spot for them, obviously, because I had like 4 or 5 number ones with the Sugar Babes, and so it's nice to see them kind of still going on after, I think it was 20 years ago or something, and Freak Like Me, which is the song with the Gary Newman sample. That's the first song I worked on with them. And so it's really nice to see that people still, enjoy that music.
Good solid
but
pop records. I mean, that's that's the thing, isn't it?
Can I just say something about that? Is that the field that they were playing on, West Holt's, formerly the Jazz World sort of stage, which is the third biggest stage in the festival, was at overcapacity for Sugar Babes, so they had to close. They closed entry. They stopped people coming into that field, and it was one of it was over. It was absolutely completely rammed for Sugar Babes, which I thought was really
power of the brand, isn't it? Power of the brand, always, especially with something like that. Interesting.
Yeah. So I didn't watch too much, and like I said, I can see the sort of concept, and it went with the camera shots and all that. So you see a lot of the crowd, and you hear a lot of the crowd, but when you sit at home and watch it on the telly, it's not going to be the same experience as being there.
No, sure.
And they tried to make it so too much, I think, to the point that it lost a bit of the fidelity from just the sonic perspective.
I thought the sound on TV was fairly across the board not very good, and I don't know why that is, because it can be, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. I mean, there are very skilled and very good engineers in the industry who could do that, and I don't know why it wasn't. I just don't understand. Maybe it's I think it's a rights issue or something.
I think it's down to just the balance of the stage, the crowd mics, the kind of the surround mics, rather than because you have a good signal, and I'm sure it was mixed well. And I encounter it when I mix live albums. It's always a compromise, because you want to get the vibe, but as soon as you push those mics up,
the phase is all over the place.
It starts sounding kind of nasty and stuff. So I think they just went a bit too far with the ambience mics.
I don't know, Robbie. What did you see some things? Any particular notable points? But it's interesting. You'd think they'd have the skills to kind of go, maybe this isn't a good idea. I'll pull that back a bit. I don't know.
I mentioned pre-show. I think I've noticed over the last couple of years or so that there have been an occasional blip in audio on certain acts where things weren't, certain mics weren't, being used properly.
Yeah, inevitably.
And you can configure.
But not for an entire set.
No, quite. I'm not a massive festival person, but I love watching Glastonbury on the TV, because I'm now of an age where I can't stand in a field for days on end. I can't sleep without a power supply next to me for my medical reasons and all of this kind of stuff. So I like to watch it on the telly. But this weekend I was quite busy, so I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of it. I did catch Coldplay, and, meh. It's bland. I don't dislike them. I don't like them. They're just kind of. I used to really like the early stuff. But that said, the show itself, the actual performance, forget the music, the actual performance, getting Laura Mvula on stage was a masterstroke. I thought that was my favourite bit, because Coldplay weren't on stage and she was. Michael J. Fox was cool there. When they did Sparks on that little island bit, I liked that a lot, because that's like off their first album. Really liked it, and it was nice to just see four blokes just playing, acoustic guitars and whatever. It was kind of nice, but not really that interesting. Sleaford Mods on the Woodsies, I thought was they're just constantly spectacular. I love them to bits. Who else did I really enjoy? Oh, the Streets. I thought the Streets were epic. Because he kind of went away for a bit, and he's come back now, and he's just bang on form. And there was this brilliant bit where he's in the crowd, and just it was just epic. So I need to catch up on a whole bunch of stuff. I saw a bit of Janelle Monáe, and with Gaz, she is just legendary. She is just superb, and yes, she should have been on where SZA was, and the other way around. But it was okay. I enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to next year, because I think they're going to go out with a bang, because the following year is going to be the fallow year. So I think they're already talking about making it a really big one. And Emily's even intimated that she's trying to get Kate Bush, and that would be
Wow.
a miracle.
Yeah, that would be a miracle.
Because I'm still waiting for her to release the video footage from the Before the Dawn gigs, because I went to the first one, the opening night, and I just want to relive it over and over again. She filmed 2 nights and never put it out, so it's weird. But yeah,
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think obviously must try harder with the sound. I think there's got to be that post-production meeting after the show. Somebody needs, because I've got a system, I've got a sound bar and I've got a woofer, and I was thinking, oh, this will sound quite good, but it sounded like it was coming out of the TV speaker. There was no considerable top end, no definition, no punch in much. I mean, not in all of it, but in much of the stuff I watched, and I just thought, yeah, that's no good. But quite interestingly, I've only watched a little bit of it on YouTube. I watched a bit. I said before the show, I watched a bit of the Coldplay thing, the whatever it was. And I know, I mean, I don't mind them. I think generally it was thought that was the sort of pinnacle of that kind of gig, to be able to do it that well, whether you like their music or not. You know, they know how to put on a show on that sort of scale for that sort of music, and it sounded great on YouTube. So I think maybe this is the other thing. You know, most of people will be probably watching this via YouTube. Maybe they just didn't put any engineering resources into telly, because nobody watches it on telly. They're all watching it on YouTube. So maybe that's something. Anyway, I'm gonna want to hold that thought, because we do have to just slot in a message from our friends over at.
In a world full of noise, cut through with iZotope RX11, the complete suite of audio repair tools for post-production, music, and content creation. Powered by cutting-edge machine learning and industry-first technology. This is everything you need to clean up your audio in seconds. Fix flaws with laser precision and release your tracks with confidence. RX11. The definitive toolkit for audio repair.
And don't forget, if you have you want to save 10%, head over to iZotope.com/Sonictalk and use the code Sonic10 to claim 10% of your iZotope plugin purchase. Really like that little key change right at the end of that. I haven't noticed that before. Anyway, that's that. Thanks very much to iZotope for their continued support of the show. All right, well, I mean, there is other news as well. It was quite, I mean, but you know, Glastonbury is a big event. I mean, I should like to put. I've done the sound on the West Holt stage. I did the sound for an 11-piece jazz funk band, and it was thrilling, I think would be fair to say, but also just being in charge of that much amplification and that much sonic width and space is such a buzz, such a buzz. Anyway, okay, well, let's see what's well, I don't know where to go. Where do we go? Oh yeah, let's go to this. This is a topic that actually has we've got some input. So yeah, new Arturia IO. That's probably the button I should press. Oh, nothing's working today. Why ever not? There we go. We'll put that in. Yeah. These are the new Arturia AudioFuse X8 in and out, which are sort of ADAT. They've got smucks. They're dual ADAT, so you can do 96K 8 IO. And you just expand your interface. It goes with AudioFuse. There's the AudioFuse 16, and there's a whole bunch of ranges it'll all work with. And it just seems like, you know, it probably seems a bit pedestrian, but actually these things are starting to making these kind of modular, and the fact that ADAT is still kind of pretty much the preferred interconnectivity of choice, I just find fascinating. I know, Yoad, you probably don't use a lot of ADAT in your studio. Are you ADAT or MADI, or what's your sort of best?
No, not any. No, I use SoundGrid, so it's all Ethernet.
So it's networked, yeah.
So 256 inputs and 256 outputs at 96K. So nothing like ADAT, which is, you know, 4 ins and outs at 96, which is a joke. I used to use Scope Creamware. Yeah. That was my first digital mixer back in the day, when I used to mix in the box as well as on SSLs and stuff. But I started mixing in the box when it was impossible to do it on one computer. So I had in my room at the townhouse studios, I had 7 computers, one for drums, one for guitars, one for vocals, one for synths. One was running Pro Tools for the reverb, so that was like the effect machine, and they were all connected to the Scope mixer, which was, at the time, it was amazing because it had 48 digital IOs through Sonorous 16 IO cards, which I had on each computer. It was just amazing. I'm talking about, I don't know, 2000, around that time, even before I had from 98, I think I had the Scope mixer. So to have 48 IOs, digital mixer, that can sum up and control all these computers, it was amazing. So that was all on ADAT because it was 44.1 or 48, which is well capable of doing. And I remember I used to have everything was synced with MIDI timecode, and I had it set up so every machine could send MIDI timecode, but also receive it. So when all the computers were stopped, any space bar that you would press
would just get
will become the master, and everything else would chase it. So it was a brilliant setup, and I don't even have any pictures, I don't think, of that setup. I had like 7 CRT. No, I had 3 flat screens at the time, TFT or whatever they are, and the rest were CRTs. It was an amazing setup, and it sounded great. I mean, it was mixing in the box before it was possible to mix in the box.
I do remember that Scope system actually vaguely. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it's so good, so good.
Yeah, Robert,
so that's my kind of fond memory of ADAT, but when you try to work at 96 or even then, I mean, it's kind of prone to clicks and stuff because it never sits properly in the socket, and you have, just the weight of the thing itself kind of
can cause problems.
The little plastic connector, it's not really a professional format, I don't think.
Right. Robbie, I much
prefer TDIF, by the way.
I remember. I had a D-type connector. Yeah, it did, didn't it? It's interesting. I wonder whether the proliferation of ADAT is because to get Dante or network ports is quite a hefty license fee and would add considerably to the base thing. But you've had these in for review, presumably. There we go.
I've got the in and the out. I haven't actually fitted them in yet, but I bought the AudioFuse 16 rig a month or so ago, and I've been very, very impressed with it. And it's because it's designed for people like me, what don't use a lot of microphones. So I just have synthesizers and effects, and so it makes perfect sense. And the Audio Rig 16 on its own was pretty good. But even plugging in, I haven't got half the things plugged in at the moment. I'm starting to think, I'm going to run out of space. So when these came out, it was just like match made in heaven. So this has given me, 8 extra ins and outs. And even when I installed the 16 rig, I got rid of 2 sub mixers that I had, 2 little line mixers around the place, so I could just feed everything directly in. And this stuff is just nice and simple. It just works. I don't think it's for the pro level studio. I think it's for people like myself or small project studios where you just want a lot of connections in and out, and or maybe just one or the other. And it's really clever design as well, because these are half width 1U rack mount units, and each unit comes with 1 rack ear and 1 mount or connecting plate. So if you buy the 2, then you just unscrew the ears, which are recessed into the bottom of the unit, and then you put it on the ends, and then you take the 2 plates and you connect those. Again, they're recessed. So if you don't use them, they don't get in the way. If you do use them, they're perfect. And then it just slots right into a standard 1U slot. So they're really very nicely made. The quality is excellent. The sound quality is superb. maybe they're a little expensive. I think they're sort of like 279 and 299 UK. I can't remember which ones.
You can buy chip. They're not mic amps, are they? Although have they got gain on them, or are they just switchable line level? I'm not sure actually.
It's all line level, but when you connect them up to the AudioFuse itself, the AudioFuse software takes care of everything, and you can just pick and choose and do whatever you want with them. And you can. So as you said, you can go up to 96, but you have to use SMUX and therefore 2 ADAT cables, because it's only 4 channels if you're using that. But other than that, I mean, they sound great. They're very, very low noise. The quality's superb. And I think if you marry them up to the actual AudioFuse 16 rig itself, it's a very compact unit. And I might even just, if I do decide to use more mics, then they do the 8 pre-unit as well, where it comes with 8 really good. So yeah, all in all, I'm very fond of them. I like them a lot.
Excellent. Idra, Gaz, do I remember correctly? Were you always RME in your place for your sound effect?
No, I was Motu really for a long time. I'm using Steinberg now. But yeah, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? 2024 ADAT being on these things. So not to go back over.
Should be networked by now, surely. I'm not having to go to Arturia, but you wonder why it's not.
Yeah.
I mean.
It's really, 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 really peculiar, especially because when Arturia launched the AudioFuse, the original one, way back, they were saying it was all about like being the latest and newest thing. So it feels slightly old-fashioned. But saying that, I've been really impressed by Arturia's move into audio interfaces. The original AudioFuse was fairly fatally flawed. With a really dodgy micro. The
micro USB and huge amounts of cable that stuck to it that were much heavier than it, and it got really hot. The original one as well, didn't it? I think
incredibly hot, and like it had like a splitter for the USB, so you could power it and separately and run it into the computer separately. But the weight of that meant that it would pull down and would make the connection really bad. Anyway, that's going over old ground. They are now, thankfully, USB-C devices. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of make sense. I think splitting the ins and the outs, because some people won't have any need for one of them, so being able to offer them as separate units is kind of curious. Do we know the price of them then?
€300, I believe, 275 UK, something like that. So
each.
they're not. Yeah, each. I mean, without mic preamps, that's not an inconsiderable. But you do get mic preamps on the AudioFuse 16 rig, and there's lots of interesting ways. The routing and stuff is quite powerful. The only thing it's missing is onboard DSP, because you just think if this was a mixer inside it, happy days, I wouldn't need anything else. But obviously that's a different price point again.
Okay, interesting. I'm kind of not seeing the excitement factor on this. I mean, when I think about like Focusrite, we're doing the Octopres years ago, the Octopre LE, the cheap one, which gave you 8 in and 8 out, either line or mic inputs, and in and out, and for around the same price, I think, as one. I think the Octopre LE was around 300. I think maybe still available. I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm not such a fan of the Focusrite stuff. I've only got a 2i2, and I had another one. The 2i2 is a bit of a donkey, as far as I'm concerned. I don't really get on with it. I know has had success with it, but I'm not a fan. For certain mics, but.
But I mean, if you're invested in the AudioFuse platform and and can use and are happy with the software front end for it, then it makes loads of sense, really. But not really seeing anything massively innovative though. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a Neil Elkins in the chat says Behringer AD8 2000. I have to consider I use one of those for a long time, just a sort of simple line. I think it's mic and line actually, and I imagine the newer ones probably got some Midas action in them, so they're going to be a little bit more rubber. But I don't have a problem with their mic preamps too. But they're fine on the.
I went into one of the BBC live broadcast trucks years ago, and that's all they had. They were using them. They had loads and loads of them, of those ADA 8000 preamps, and loads of them. Maybe they
only do 40. They only do 48 though. Yeah, they only do up to 48. Obviously, those things. So you're not going to get the 96. Anyway, it's out there. It's available. Well worth checking out if you're in that world. And I mean, Arturia have been pushing the audio of it. This is several iterations in. I'm sure there's going to be more to come because they seem to be expanding into so many different areas and really kind of trying to push the boundaries with that. But I think the first company to come up with an affordable way to integrate network stuff in is going to probably win out, because that's part of the problem. I mean, unless you're going to go Dante, and we've talked about this before, the Dante license, I think, to put in your hardware is probably quite expensive for a manufacturer, and it takes it into a sort of more professional category of gear, which perhaps project studios aren't prepared to pay for. So, you've got that dilemma. But Dante seems to have won the network audio. I mean, we've got AES 50 on the X32 here, and there are AVB, there are lots of different ones, but Dante's the sort of seems to have been the winner. It's just, unless they reduce a lot, I mean, I know there are lots of different ways you can use it, but you can get virtual sound card and all that kind of stuff, but it starts to add up. I think I reviewed the Yamaha DM3, and the Dante version is great, but the Dante stage box costs almost as much as the mixer, and it's just like, okay, that's got to be something to do. But I mean, but that is pro grade stuff. Yamaha digital consoles are pretty good, solid stuff. Okay, let's have a look. What else? Oh, I don't know. Well, I suppose we spoke a little about Behringers, so we could in fact just quickly mention the UB-XA, because there's a lot of Oberheim in the world at the moment. Let me see if any of my buttons are going to work today. I hope so.
Welcome to another.
No, obviously not.
No,
not at all. None of them. There we go. This is Scott McCauley Sounds with a demo. And it's the UB-XA, which has been out for a while, and it's now shipping. It feels like there was an image of, I think it was probably where was my original, I can't remember where the post was from. I think it was maybe from Synth Anatomy. Usually catches that stuff pretty well. And this is obviously got some additional effects, I believe. Does sound nice, but then many synths do when they've got this stuff on it. There seems like a lot of stereo going on here, but obviously this is going up against the TO5, which I've got in for review, and the OBX8, which is which is obviously a completely different price point. And from what I can gather, I think we had Stimming on, and he compared the UBX and the original the Oberheims, and he said it was quite night and day. But that's a lot of 16 voices. There's a lot of voices, Robbie. Is it sort of thing that you're getting? I mean, I've been playing, I think they're about €1,000 yard. I've been playing with the TO5, and after the Polybrute 12, I'm really sort of feeling the lack of polyphony.
yeah I don't want to get bogged down in anything to do with Behringer, other than let's just look at this synth. Everything I've heard of this without effects sounds okay, but everything I've heard with effects, and Scott's a great patch programmer, and I did some stuff on Gear News last week where I focused on UB-XA patches, and all of these patch demos, all of them had a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay on there, and they sounded really, really good. So I'm wondering why didn't Behringer spend just a little bit more money and put just one of their basic effects processors in there, because they have them. They put them in their little Xenix mixers. Just put one in there with some selectable effects, and it would have just sealed the deal, I think. But no, it sounds okay. It's I think it's admirable that we've now got a 16 voice polyphonic analog synth with polyphonic aftertouch, and that atrophy mode, which is like the vintage knob on many synths, for it's around €1,200, I think they're selling for. I mean, that's a great price point, and it's going to open up analog synths for a lot of people, I just wish they wouldn't trade off other people's IP. But there you go. That's my little bit.
I get that totally. It's interesting. Yoad, I know you're a big fan of the DeepMind, and what Robbie said was kind of, fairly reasonable. I mean, the DeepMind, part of what makes the DeepMind so great is the way that they've integrated all of those 4 effect slots with that really
the TC effect,
the TC effects. I mean, it's just a brilliant model, and it sort of makes up for the fact, because it's not the fattest sounding synth, individual oscillators, but the sum of the parts definitely gets you places you couldn't go. And that's in the box.
So, but I think that Behringer tried to go kind of the puristic way with the UB-XA and to make it sort of credible on its own merit, sort of like as a proper analog synth, and the fact that it's 16 voice and all that. I've not heard it, and it would be interesting to hear a comparison between the all the kind of available versions of that synth that are now available, and to see, because if the differences are minute, then obviously it's a good deal even without the effects, because you can add the effects in any situation, even if you're in a live situation and it means that you have to buy a cheap Behringer or Yamaha mixer or something and run it through just for the effects or some pedals or something. I think it's still, but yeah, I mean, I think effects. We know that effects make everything sound better. So
we've become so used to it, and I think it makes up for certainly people like me who can't play very well. I've been noticing this. It's like I can easily make a synth sound great if I've got a long reverb and some effects, and it's a long languid note. And it does address my playing shortcomings, and I suppose that's probably something that is a truism for a lot of players as well. I know, Gaz, it's interesting, isn't it? A Synth Samurai actually says, which I think is a point. He says, I wish that they'd called it. Not called it that and added effects, because the DeepMind is a great, it's not it was groundbreaking, and it seems like that would be the strongest card for Behringer to play. Look, all of our stuff in this one box. Amazing. Yeah. Sounds a bit like an Oberheim, or a lot like an Oberheim, but it's got so much more, rather than trying to make a comparison. How cheap can you make it,
Yeah, it's puzzling. I do think, though, I mean, I think a lot about this, about the clones, and about whether, the morality of it, and it's, it is uncomfortable at times. But I do think that ultimately, though, people who might buy the UB-XA will probably covet an actual Oberheim, maybe more. Like, even though they got one, that they will at some point try to move up the chain, so to speak. So I wonder whether having more of these in the world just increases the desire for the original.
Maybe.
Maybe. It definitely happens with guitars, doesn't it? A 60 quid Strat copy off Amazon it's got a whammy bar. You can pick between the 3. You got the pickup selector between the 3 pickups. You got the tuners. Everything is kind of ostensibly there, and it looks the same. But people aspire to move on, and get more premium versions of them, even though they're essentially the same.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, there's a cachet to having the original. Yeah, no, it's true. Wagyu makes a point. Maybe the UB-XA wouldn't have ever come to fruition if the XA hadn't been announced, which is entirely possible. I don't know whether that's true, but it's probably shifted them on a bit in their plans when they heard it was coming.
It does make me think, though, just like where we are now. When the DeepMind came out, we'd had a dearth. We hadn't had any analog polys, or pseudo analog polys, whatever you want to call it. Oh, sorry, and now we're it's unbelievable how many polys are available. One other thing I noticed in Glastonbury and a few places, I was seeing UDO Super 6s, and actually Orbital were using a Super Gemini, I noticed.
They were.
Yeah.
James Blake was using a Super 6 for quite a lot of his set. Sounded fantastic. So sort of seeing these polys out in the wild is also is nice. So I'd imagine we'll see a lot of these Behringers as well.
A lot of Nords. Usually see a lot of Nords at Glastonbury, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Were there a lot of those? They're still
I'm almost
backline.
oblivious to Nords because I expect them to be there.
You're Nord blind. I've gone Nord blind. I think I'm going to put that down as a show title. Actually, that's a good one.
And fair play to Nord, fantastic. If only they could get the gig bags made properly. And I know some of you out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, Nords are fantastic. They're omnipresent at a festival like Glastonbury. I think a lot of backline places that supply.
Yeah, everybody wants to use those. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a standard. I played the Mark IV or whatever it was, the latest one at the Nord Grand at NAMM for about 20 minutes, and I really wish I'd plugged something into it because I thought it sounded absolutely fantastic. And funnily enough, I ended up putting loads of reverb on everything, loads of effects. So my playing, but there's something about a piano as the starting point, which really encourages you to play a bit. I thought that sounded fantastic. I have to say.
What about the Yamaha, the MOX, or what it's called, the new workstation?
Mode X,
was it
Montage
on show and on stages?
I didn't see anything, but I wasn't looking.
Because that one sounds quite good, I think, and
it does sound good
and properly designed for live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all.
I think it's more MD stuff, isn't it? It's more stuff the way you've got a plethora of keyboard things. Maybe it applies to a slightly different audience. I don't know. But that's it's a very interesting point you bring up. I mean, using Glastonbury as a kind of synth spotting thing. Yeah. And one thing I did see, did anyone see LCD Sound System? They were on the main stage, I think. And on TV, honestly, I was looking at it. It was chaos. They just had sort of boxes, piled on boxes with cables dangling around and custom cases and a synth in one thing and then a load of cables. I was just thinking, roadie's nightmare, but it was it was a really good fun. The drummer was at the side, which seems to be a thing now. They don't put the drum at the back, they put them on the side now. The LCD sound system, and I was trying to spot all of their stuff, and a lot of it looked custom and a lot of it looked very unfamiliar, but it was quite that was really interesting. But it's great for sort of spotting what people are using live. I mean, you also get everybody's still got a Korg. What is it, Micro Korg? A lot of those bands still have a Micro Korg sat there for doing that stuff, but it's quite an interesting.
I spotted 3 micro Mellotrons. They seem to be picking up.
Yes, I saw one of those as well. Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw that. Actually, I should probably quickly interject because we do have another advertising slot to fulfil. So I want to just let you know about Native Instruments. Of course, Summer of Sound actually ends on the 8th of July, so you want to make sure you get your deals in. You can save up to 50% off Complete 14. You can save off instrument and effects iconic virtual synths for only $19. Some of those are fantastic. 50% off single instruments, half price sound packs, whole bunch of things. Huge hardware and software deals, so you can get the keyboards, DJ controllers, and the X1 for only $249. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. Anyway, you've got till July the 8th to get your savings with the Summer of Sound with Native Instruments. Ends July the 8th. Yes, it's Glastonbury. I mean, we could probably do an entire show of just synth spotting and gear spotting at Glastonbury. I was trying to think what else we saw there. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating that because but I think the thing is with touring acts. I remember this when Goldfrapp were putting their show together. They were about to go on tour. We were rehearsing at Real World, which meant that there were some of the Gabriel crew there. So they got kind of like, oh, you should use this thing. So you get all this kind of like, oh, we use this and they use that. And then the people who are on the Gabriel tour who were coming over to work for Goldfrapp, they'd also been on a Coldplay tour. So there was all this kind of cross-pollination. So you get this kind of strata of keyboard techs and sound techs that kind of all recommend the same things that they've solved problems with themselves and had found reliable, because you don't want to find out something's not reliable after you go, yeah, that looks good, and then you're on tour and suddenly you can't get a replacement for it, or it balks, or it's too, whatever. So these sort of things are really important when it comes to that sort of thing. I don't know how. I don't know what front of house sounds they. I think most people will probably bring their own rigs in. I imagine for the front of house, they've probably got like I don't know, one of the Digizyne front of house. They've probably got a couple of different sorts that you just put side by side, and you just come in, which one do you want to use, and they just patch up the cables, and you stick your USB stick in it, and off you go. Your show's ready to go. I mean, that's one of the most powerful things, because I mean, it used to be with Glastonbury that you would have like maybe a Midas and a Yamaha at front of house, and so there would be the two most often used analog consoles, and then depending on which act uses which, you'd flip over to the one that was you were most familiar with. And I suppose you can fit probably 3 digital consoles or 4 in the space. They probably rotate them around. I don't know. Have you ever done any live sound on that sort of level?
I used to do a lot of live sound, mostly analog. So my preferred. I used to love the Soundcraft 8000 and 6000, the one with the tiny switches for the high or low Q on the EQs. They were great. Right. There was the Yamaha, which people used to call the Japanese, the one
was it
with
the PM 6000, something like that? Yeah, where the gains were just above the fader. Those sounded amazing. And of course, I worked on the development of Waves LV1, which is again based on the SoundGrid format. So you can run stage box like 100 meters digital. So the converters are actually on stage. And so you do all the conversion on stage, and you run just one Ethernet cable, and it can accommodate up to 256 IOs. So you can send back. So with one cable, which you can extend to up to 400 meters. So this is crazy with just just one Ethernet cable that can hold up, that can run all this audio. So the LV1, a lot of I'm not sure if it was present in Glastonbury, but a lot of people use it for, I know, the Olympic Games and a lot of Eurovision and big kind of broadcast programs and stuff use it, and it doesn't even have a dedicated surface, so it's all touch screen, and it takes very little space. Interesting, probably.
So that's a very, very capable machine.
Actually,
but
that reminds me of
Digizyne and I mean, it's all plugins, so it's very compatible with how you mix in the box, really, these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And production rehearsals. I mean, we see. I was looking. We're starting to put archives together, because what we've decided, one of the tiers that we're going to add a perk to is we've got a whole load of Sonicstate archive stuff that is a bit lower resolution, but it's going to go up to our one of the Patreon tiers, so people can explore and poke around in that. And I was looking at one that I did with forget the name of the guy, but he did. He used to do Liz Fraser. He did Massive Attack. I've forgotten. Rob Allen, front of house, and we had a really interesting chat about what those consoles were allowing you to do back then. And this is kind of like 20 years ago, nearly. It's astonishing. Gaz, do you remember when they used to put dig up the massive trench to put the multi-cores between the sound tower and the stage? I wonder if it's not anymore. I guess.
No,
what's that you got there?
Gantry. Oh yeah. So I thought this is something I bought recently. It's a JHS Colourbox 2, and you can see this picture of mixing desk on there. And what this tries to do is it tries to kind of give you essentially like a Neve 1073 and EQ in a pedal. And I thought it was kind of relevant because it's got the like Lundell transformers, input and output transformers, and it's got like a 3-band EQ with frequency shifts for each of the bands. It's got a switchable high pass filter.
Oh, interesting.
And then I think, and crucially, this I think is the magic control. It's got like a stepped gain. It's got 5 gain stages, gain sort of sets really, and then you've got like an input gain and an output gain. But then, what's quite cool is you can find the right. I think as well. Yeah, you've got a high and a low, so you can make it. You can drive it a lot harder. But
interesting.
And it's got XLR input on there, and an XLR out on there. And it doesn't generate phantom, but it will pass through phantom power. Sound fantastic on snare drums. And it's just, the reason I was mentioning it, I thought it would be good. With a lot of modern things, a lot of modern mixers, you lose a certain thing that I think a lot of it is in the transformers, if I'm honest. Like, because even just running through this and with hardly any EQ, just the flavors of the transformers is just so nice. It's like the idea of this is meant to simulate what it's like plugging directly into a deck.
What is it? Is that 3 channels, or what's the kind of? I don't understand why it's got so many knobs on.
No, so it's a single channel. You got 3. You got a mid. You got a low, mid, and high EQ with.
So it's
mid-shift.
gain, Q, and right. Okay, I see. I understand.
Yeah, so it's sort of semi-parametric, I suppose. But I think this is really a bit of a. I think it's a bit of a hit. This is anything you
make
put
a better
through
box. Yeah,
make it better. Yeah, it's called the Colourbox, and it really is a make it better. When I put my bass through it, and my alembic bass actually, it was such a brilliant combination, and just everything.
What does it cost?
Oh, it's pretty pricey. It's 400 quid.
Okay, well, it's a single channel, but I mean that's
this.
Okay.
This would be ideal for use with the Q clone, which I think we talked about it. Not many people know about it. It's a Waves plugin that I initiated back in the day, which uses real-time convolution, which I have a patent on. I have to brag because it's one of the 2 I have through Waves. But what it does is that you run a sweep every 400 milliseconds. It runs a sweep, and it measures the EQ. So at 400 milliseconds, by the time you turn the knob, it feels like real time because it's interpolated, and it creates an EQ curve based on the IR that it kind of learns from the sweep. So something like that. I used to have it because I have an Eve, so I used to use channel 24. So I have it's just here. But for people who don't, and getting a channel is a big. This is the form factor of it is ideal for something like that because you can have it on your desk, and then essentially you would have an EQ on every channel, because so you have the capture plugin which runs the sweep, and it communicates with every instance of the Q clone plugin. So you have it runs and then you just hit capture, so you can have it. The good thing is that you have it like on a stereo piano or an overhead kind of channel, stereo channel, and it will use both channels with the same settings, so you don't have to have 2 channels, or you can have it even on a surround channel using just one EQ. So I know that a lot of people that actually own the Waves bundles, they're not even aware that they have the Q clone because the concept is very hard to explain. So the marketing for it was non-existent, really. So I recommend anyone to just explore it, because
that's interesting. So you could have a single
like
hardware,
any EQ, even a pedal or any kind of linear processor. It's not going to do anything with distortions and stuff. But any type of EQ, you really get the analog. But it's not only the sound. It's also the feel, because you put it on a lot of tracks. You just tweak it, so you don't need a controller. And the sound actually goes through it virtually. Obviously, it's the IR that
Interesting.
captures from the suite. So
Cool. Wow. Okay, that's a top tip. I'll have to check that out. I'm trying to think where we got to actually. Where we were, 5:05 already. So yes, I just wanted to throw it because this was a Die Stanton. Sorry to get political. I don't think that's right, but in the UK, get out and vote tomorrow because obviously we've got a general election. I just think it's only fair, seeing as he paid for the advertising, that he should say. So go out and vote. Yes, I would thoroughly concur with that. I think it's a good idea generally if you're able to do it. There was one other thing that I just wanted to mention quickly. A big shout out to Ben Burling. I got a really nice email from him. He's out walking in Greece, where he said this is his favourite podcast and he's doing long walks and listening to that. Yeah, Ben Burling, thanks for listening. Thanks for saying nice things. I guess really we probably should think about shutting things down because I've got to get an early night tonight because I'm probably going to be up all night watching the election results. I don't know about you guys. So what's next for you? Doing a show tonight?
No, not tonight, but I will be. I keep saying I'm going to be coming back, and soon. What's next, though? For me, I mean, I've mentioned it before, but the concert I'm playing with Steve Davis in Brecon Cathedral on the 10th of August is my main thing that I'm gearing up ready for. Really excited about that. We've got a much stronger idea of what we're doing now. We're going to essentially do 3 20-minute performances with little intervals in between and very contrasting performances.
Probably interesting idea.
Different modular rigs for each of the performances, so to make sure that the palette is very different.
Like a concept album.
Yeah, we're gonna record it hopefully as a Rack Records, so our new label, for a release on that. But yeah, tickets are available for that now, and that's something that's going to be pretty awesome. There's going to be an enormous 12 square meter LED screen being erected in the cathedral, which we're going to do sort of synchronized visuals with.
Can I make a suggestion that you use a Blumline pair high up in that space as an ambient source? Because that, honestly, I did the Moog. I did the Moog Archimedes screw thing, which is on the mount without, and that basically forms most of the recording of that event because it sounded so good. And the stereo image, Blumline pair of ribbons, pair of figure eights, like that, basically, just tip to tip, figure eight in one direction, figure eight in another. They sound absolutely, particularly for capturing spaces like that, sound amazing.
So they need to be, identical models to do it.
I think it helps, but yeah, preferably. We've got a pair of SE. I can't remember what they are. The Voodoo VR1 SE, and that's what I used on the Moog, and they sounded bloody great.
One thing I'm thinking of doing, though, but I have been warned about it, was like going to the cathedral before the gig and then putting some impulses and take some measurements of the cathedral and then work out what the absolute resonant frequency is of the cathedral. And it's with the analog oscillator going into and just try to get. But then someone said you could actually, if it's super resonant, you could actually bring the whole cathedral down, which it'd be an amazing. An awful thing. What
a way to go!
Yeah,
you don't want all that plaster dust on your modular synths as it falls out. Lovely. Well, I hope that goes well. Anyway, Robbie, what about you? You got something coming up on Friday, presumably? ProSynth Network show.
Yeah, usual ProSynth Network show this Friday, 7 p.m. UK time on YouTube. Links on the screen. Thank you for that, Nick. There's more news. Things ramping up. So I've got reviews to write and things to do, and I want to get these audio fuses installed because I recently acquired a Monroe egg monitor system in here, which is stunning, but I need to make sure it's working, it's optimal, so I need to rip some things out, put some things in. I also need to sort all this out behind me because it's just getting too much. So I'm looking at some new studio furniture and a new way of organising all of these synths so I can just store them and then pull them out as and when I need them. It's getting a bit much, and the Mrs. Puricelli is not too happy.
I can give you,
yeah,
if depending on how you want to store them, I can give a shout out for guitar racks. If you get the right kind of guitar rack, you can stand up keyboards end on end on end, as long as they're, I've got over there, there's an entire wall of guitar racks. I mean, it's probably not going to work for Polybrute 12s, but anything that's a bit less substantial, you can stand them all on end.
That will always stay centre stage, I'm afraid, because I found this over the weekend when I was showing people it. They would then say thank you and move away, and then I would just carry on because it's so intoxicating. It's such a beautiful thing to play. But what I've been looking at is these chromed catering shells. Just
we got those as well.
Yeah, and just put in 8 or 9 keyboards on this thing, and just have it in the corner over there, and move that Jaspers over. And then somehow get that around the DX1, because that's the thing that's taking up a huge amount of space. But it's lovely, and I don't have to sort of put it into storage or anything. So trying to work around that and get all my rack mount gear into a rack mount unit and use it finally. That would be great. So, but I've only got this sort of fixed space to work with. So yeah.
You could always put the DX1 on the wall flat in between the monitors, so as a sort of centerpiece.
I don't think the walls could handle it, seriously.
No, you're probably right.
Heavy thing.
It certainly is. And I guess, are you going to alt-tab into some massive Atmos mix now, or are you got a bit of downtime?
Not today, but I am working with Ginger Audio on stuff which is somewhat relevant to especially to the Arturia new interface, because it's a system. We have a product called Sphere, which allows you to control your speakers for Dolby Atmos and other immersive formats in native on your computer, so you don't need really expensive hardware. So this is a really exciting project, and we're working on V2, on version 2 of that. So anyone who is into Dolby Atmos and is considering getting a setup, even if it's a 5.1 or even 4.0 or whatever, I really recommend looking at that, because all the hardware controllers are really, really expensive, in the thousands. So this runs natively on your computer alongside with your DAW and Dolby Atmos renderer and all that, and controls. So that's one thing. And we're also starting to work on a really exciting project that will be relevant to this show. It will take some time. So
that sounds interesting.
About that.
Cool. Okay, well, we look forward to that. Gaz, yep.
I sent you a file. I don't know if you've seen it. Email. It would just be really funny if you can. I don't know if that's too late.
No, I can't, because the file will arrive here.
Don't worry.
And we're
another time
in Virginia. But I will try and look at it. But thank you, guys.
All right.
A couple of things I wanted to say. Thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks to our guests, of course. Don't forget, I'll put the next week's show up live, episode 808. We've got a very special guest. But if you've got questions for topics, this is something going forward. Stick them in the comments for the following week's show. That will be up live before I leave the building today. And also wanted to say, don't forget to do a thumbs up and like as you go. It always helps. I think it sort of gives, I don't know, spoofs the YouTube algorithm or whatever. Gets us more views, gets more people in more people's feeds. So do like and subscribe and all of those things that you're supposed to say that I haven't said for years. Oh look, Robbie's just put both thumbs up, and he's triggered. I can tell you're on a late version of OS X, because that's what that does with your webcams. Anyway, thank you very much, folks. Lovely to see you all. Next week will be 808 special guest and some other guests as well. So thank you very much. Sonic Talk 807 is done. See you later, folks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.